Okay, from our studios this week in Los Angeles and Tampa, this is Green Tag Theme Park in 30. I'm Philip from Ganto Mighty and Controls, and I'm joined, as always, by my delightful co-host, Scott Swenson of Scott Swenson Creative Development. Here on Green Tag, we look at the top news each week, and we explain why it matters to industry professionals in the theme parks, theme entertainment space, all those spaces. This week, we're going to talk a little bit about the one-year anniversary of Epic. Jeff Polk, he sat down and he gave interviews to a small press cohort, and he said it's kind of hub and spoke, but there's no wagon wheel to go around the outside. He didn't talk about this during the interview, but it was previously reported that they were testing an open hub concept that they had tested a few times for a corporate event, and that they're also testing facial recognition, which we will get to in the next story. But essentially, basically, people who were at the event could get access only to the central area there, the Celestial Park, and they wouldn't have access inside. But in order to do that, of course, you have to be able to check tickets at each of the gates. What else? He said Epic Universe is both impacting but also existing within this organic movement, which is more intimacy, more immediate immersion, more personal attachment to the experiences in front of you. Basically, they mentioned that they are considering future expansions, but are currently focused on optimizing the existing guest experience. And he reiterated that it took the other parks, 35 years to fully develop. Those are the highlights. And he didn't talk about this either, but as a related note, they have started meet and greets with Captain Cacao. And Universal describes Captain Cacao as a chocolate bear who was brought to life by the cosmic energy of Celestial Park. He and his best friend Maya of the Skies travel the universe looking for treats for her shop. So they noticed that this chocolate bear that's in the Celestial area was popular. So they created it, they turned it into a character, and now they're bringing in a character meet and greet into these areas, which I think is what he's talking about. Like, my analysis here is I think that he's saying they need smaller experiences to soak up the crowds because there's only a few e-tickets and everyone just stands in line for those. So they can't really up attendance until they get the crowd thing figured out. And then that in the future, you could see them charge potentially per portal, or you could see it where they turn the Celestial Park into CityWalk and then kind of scan per portal. So I could see those as possible ways to further monetize or further, spread out the crowd. But what do you think?
Didn't we just talk about this on a show? It was either last week or week before, where we said, the way this is set up is it could very easily, and I think we talked about it actually even right after it opened. We all noticed, it's like, yes, there's a B in dumb. We all noticed already that it's maybe hub and spoke, but there is no wagon wheel around the outside. Yeah, we all noticed that, and we all saw it, for exactly what they may be doing with it. Who knows? To make it you can either do one big experience and do everything, or you can do, smaller park experiences that only last part of the day, and then you come back to your central hub. I would guess that they would probably, if they are going to go to that model, which, again, this is just speculation, but if they are going to go to that model of Celestial Park becomes the City Walk, then I'm guessing they would get the coaster into something. They would put the coaster into some spoke somewhere. They may keep the carousel. They may keep that as part of that central hub, but yeah, who knows? But I think this all makes total sense. The other thing that I'm seeing more and more is, and this park is very conducive to this in its 1 year of operation. That is, when they do events, you don't have to rent out the whole park. And it is significantly more cost effective for them to be able to say you're renting out Isle of Berk, or you're renting out Mario World, or whatever. So they can focus their operation into those areas. And I attended the TEA event during IAPA, which was just in Isle of Berk. Now IAPA Celebrates was the whole park, but you can also do those little one-offs where you get you have monsters, or you have gameplay, or you have Potter, or and it's interesting because more and more people, and I've seen this recently, it's interesting that we're talking about this on the show. I've seen this recently that more and more people are posting photos and images from these kinds of corporate events which don't have the shoulder-to-shoulder massive crowds, which don't have the 2.5 to 3 hour queues, and are saying, oh my gosh, I never thought I would be able to experience this park like this. It is so much more magical. And I said the same thing. I have only experienced Epic in special events. I've never been as a day guest. And I've only experienced it at night, which, is another element. So I've never experienced the, oh my God, it's so hot, I feel like I'm going to melt and sizzle in the pavement. I have never experienced the shoulder to shoulder crowds. So it's interesting to me that I have a very positive spin on the park because I've experienced it in a very specific way. Now, maybe after a year, they're starting to recognize, well, wait a minute, this is the way we want this park to be experienced. So they may lean a little more heavily into that. I'm not sure American audiences are gonna go for that, because I think the standard has been set with multi-land parks, and you have to make it a full day. You have to do rope drop to shutdown, rope drop to park clear. But it's interesting. I also think it's interesting that they're saying there's not any expansion planned, which we know that's not true. They've already filed for expansions already. So, now maybe those files are just sitting there and they're not going to do anything with them. I don't believe that, but they've already plotted out lands for their expansions. And any park that says we have no plans for expansions are probably lying, because there's always plans for expansion. In fact, parks are often built with plans for expansion in the actual original design. So that's just common practice. I think what they're trying to say here is, I think this is a real focus back to, we really care about our guest experience, because they've been slammed for it throughout the year. It's just, they've had their hands slapped right and left. Going back to Isle of Burke, we're seeing more and more of the dinosaurs. I'm sorry, of the dragons. No, it's not Land of the Dinosaurs, Land of the Dragons. More and more of the dragons, and the one-on-one experiences. That's what we're seeing in the social media posts, is the one-on-one stuff. And it's not Toothless, because everybody already has a bad taste in their mouth for having to wait too long to see Toothless. Now, I personally feel it's worth the wait, because I think it's just magical. But that's my own opinion. A guest with, if I had 4-year-old twins and a 7-year-old, I probably wouldn't feel that way. So I think it is very interesting. This whole the story that interests me the most, honestly, is the new chocolate bear.
Yeah. I agree.
Because it is truly integrating entertainment, character engagement with retail merchandising, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if you've seen pictures of this bear, it is meh at best. The costume is okay, but it's nothing special. It doesn't seem to be of the same level. It almost seems to be something that the independent chocolatier came up with, as opposed to the park as a whole. Yeah. That may not be true. I don't know, but that's just kind of how it looks to me. And but I am interested in the fact that they are breaking through those walls that separate guest experience from merchandise and retail. Because again, they've seen it work. They've seen it work in Potter. They've seen it work in Potter every time they've incorporated Potter. I'm guessing they've seen it work in Mario as well, because I see an awful lot of people wearing Mario stuff when they leave. But so it's interesting. I think they've learned quite a bit in the first year. I think they're really listening to what the guest comments are. Upgrades to restaurants and services inside instead of services inside instead of just at the gate. I think that is an attempt to make it so that they are listening to their guest comments of, oh my God, I have to schlep all the way back to the front gate to get X, Y, or Z. It is a unique park. I mean, just kind of summing up all this rambling, it is a unique park that has the opportunity to be operated in multiple ways. And I just don't think they know quite what that is yet. And after a year, I don't expect them to.
Yeah, that's right. I will. I guess I wasn't there, obviously. I read a bunch of articles from about the same interview, and it's clear that they talked to each media person differently because they all wrote different angles. But and I've experienced it many times in both events that we were there, not the TEA, but the regular IAPA event, plus I've been there as a day guest a few times. The experience is very uneven, and I know that they're getting blowback for that online as well. It's very uneven because if you go in the summer during the day, it's a terrible experience. And if you go at night and you're just hanging out and you're not having to wait in lines or you have express or whatever, it's a very different experience. So it's a very uneven experience. I think what we all know, though, is we've said this too. So there's just nothing in the Celestial Park. It's just too big. It feels empty. I find the exiting the portals annoying because it just takes time to go back and forth. You're going back and forth and back and forth, and there's just so much walking and there's so much dead space and just nothing there. But I think however you want to frame it, it's I'm not sure that they originally intended for it to be like this. I would believe more that they kind of some plans didn't materialize when they were getting to the finishing line for budgetary reasons, and so then we got what we got, and then they get this guest feedback, and now probably somebody had the idea to use their assets and pivot. And I think the pivots are smart. I actually think if they did bring the park and they made it more of a city walk type experience, I think that actually would help because it's so there's nothing there. It's so spacious, and I think they don't need another e-ticket. I think they do need stuff to entertain people. They need entertainment. They need entertainment.
And
That's it.
What's interesting to me is, everybody, you've said it, I've heard you say it, I've heard multiple other people say it, that Celestial Park is just a big empty nothing, a big flat nothing. But having been there only at night, I think it is incredibly visually appealing. I think there's plenty.
Well, it's a good backdrop.
It's a beautiful backdrop, and it's lovely to walk through, and the lighting is amazing, but for someone who's looking for something to specifically quote unquote do, not just experience, the images that I've seen during the day, I totally understand why people say that during the day, because it's sort of like, wait, are we in the parking lot? Because it's this big concrete expanse.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's exactly it. Where it's a good backdrop, like you're saying, it's nice to stroll and walk around. So if you were to take that, and then I don't know, however they're gonna, bring in vendors or bring in some store or make it more of like a little mall experience with like Disney Springs with an excellent backdrop. So you have an excellent backdrop that's really nice, and then you had some activities for people to do. I think that's a good pivot. If clearly it didn't turn for whatever reason. I don't believe this was what they intended originally, and it's probably a budget scaling issue. And then they're here, and now you have this big empty space. So, but it's a great backdrop, and whether they use it for events or they use it for add-in vendors or make it a city walk or whatever, I think it's a fun place at night to walk around. It's literally a park that is gorgeous.
But and one of the expansions that they have already filed for is a CityWalk-style thing outside of, and again, I'm not sharing any insider information. I don't work on the project. I don't know anything about it. But I do know that this has been planned. And so it's clearly obvious that it has been planned because it takes you forever to get from the parking lot to the entrance of the park itself. But it's very spread out with the intent that obviously they're going to fill it in with something. Well, it's the real estate's too expensive not to do something with.
That's right. I think he did mention that as well, where he says basically they have a roughly equivalent amount of space in the Epic area than they do with all the other parks together, and it's kind of like it's a lot of space. So I didn't take from it that they weren't planning it. I took that exactly what he says, that they're considering the expansions, but they're currently focused on optimizing. And I think that's probably the best thing to do, because when you look at what is the easiest path, I think, to more revenue to pay the park off? I think the easiest path is make the park more efficient so that more people can go there and spend money than versus like, let's build more things. And how you do that? Well, why do we need to build a city walk outside of it now? Why don't we just start the city walk experience inside and then slowly increase our capacity to hold people through entertainment, which is cheaper than building another expansion. So to do that first so that we can hold more people and make more money. I think that's solid.
Yeah, I think if that's the way you're going to scale it, I mean, I think the other thing to take into consideration is, and I don't think many people even think about this or even notice it, but all the other Universal parks, they say they have significantly more land at Epic, which is true. But even when you look at the other Universal parks, they feel small because there's a giant lagoon in the middle of them.
Yeah,
both of
that's
them.
true. That's true.
So you have, you have this, instead of a carousel, you have a giant water feature. Now you can argue and say, yes, but there are fountains here. And yeah, but it's not a lagoon. It's not a body of water. It is clearly a fountain or fountains, a fountain pool. So even that creates a sense of cooling. Even that creates a sense of excitement because you can look across the lagoon and see see the land that you can't get to in a straight path. Because the other parks are the opposite of hub and spoke. The other parks are a big circle.
Yep.
Basically, more or less.
Yep.
So it's interesting because it's less like the other Universal parks in Florida, so it's harder to train your audience to be comfortable with that. And so yeah, I agree with you. I think it is important, and I understand your point of view when you say he the thing is he downplays. He did not say we're not going to expand, but he downplays that.
He did. That's right.
And I think that, at least from the information that I've seen, he seems to be downplaying the fact that, we don't need more. We've got plenty. What we need is to really focus on. No, you need more. I think it needs more. I mean, you said that the first time you went. I know people who were involved with the program and with the project during its construction. And the first comment I heard from almost all of them was, I'm just afraid there's not enough to do to make it so that you can have a family there the whole day.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is I agree with that 100%. There isn't enough to do, but I think that it's easier to add in entertainment and stuff like this Cocoa Bear meet and greet and whatever, things like that, than it is to like, let's build another building. I'm like, no, you don't need more building. You need more dragons. We need more it's like more fog. We need
cowbell. We need more cowbell. We need more dragons.
We need more dragons. We need more meet and greets. We need entertainment.
If they could, I think another problem, and I think this is psychological, really. I think another problem they have is all of the portals lead to places that are so IP rich. They're so story rich. There's so many layers and so many developed stories in all of those portals, every single one of them. But Celestial Park has virtually no layered storytelling. And I think that's why people find it big and empty, because there's no story. For example, walking through Isle of Burke, which I think is I think my favorite theming in the park, followed closely by Potter, but just walking around that loop is far more interesting to me than walking around the carousel in Celestial Park. Celestial Park is a transition space that is too big from one IP to the next. And I think they need to continue, adding things like Captain Cacao. I think that's, I'm personally not impressed with the activation of it, but I think the idea of it is probably good, because you're, again, building layers of story in this gigantic transitional area.
That's right.
So that people don't feel as though, there's nothing going on here. I know what's going on in Isle of Burke. I know what's going on in Monsters. I know what's going on in all these other areas. I have that emotional connection. I know what that story is. I know the world we're walking into. And then we come out into Celestial Park and it's pretty.
Yep.
So I think that's
Okay,
why it seems so dull, personally.
I agree. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about the Disney suit, which is a little bit related, just because of the
Well,
idea
yeah,
that if they,
if they're going to use facial recognition to get into portals, this could.
that's right,
This,
that's right, that's
they're
right.
probably
So
just
I
sitting back
think,
going, "I wonder how this is going to turn out."
yeah. So just to clarify, this has not been confirmed at all by Universal. They just, a lot of people have been talking about it just because of this whole conversation, but Universal didn't address this at all in any of these meetings, or they haven't talked about it officially. But they did do that event, and what we're saying is it would make sense to try something like this because Celestial Park is so empty, and also because, like Scott said, it's so beautiful at night, but they're not. That's like a short window,
Yeah,
of the full park
it's
day.
pretty lights with no storytelling. That's what it boils down to.
Right. And so if you could use that as a backdrop, or you could let people into that area to hang out, like make it like a natural park or whatever, then that could activate that space more and give it more energy. But in order to do that, you would need to like find a way to check tickets at each portal. And they have been sort of beta testing this, but they haven't made an official announcement. So that's how it relates to the next story. The next story is about Disney that is being sued for facial recognition at Disneyland. I'm going to read here excerpts from the Hollywood Reporter, which did probably the best job covering this of anybody. And they said, Disney has been sued for deploying facial recognition technology at park entrances to verify tickets. A class action accuses the entertainment giant of violating privacy, competition, and consumer protection laws by implementing the technology at Disneyland, where photographs of guests' faces are taken and compared with images when they first use their ticket or annual pass. The company does not adequately disclose. So this is a quote from the suit. I'm quoting from the story. So the company does not adequately disclose the use of their biometric collection. So consumers, which almost always include children, have no idea that Disney is collecting this highly sensitive data, reads the complaint filed in California's federal court on Friday. The journalist for this story made a very apt connection to how sports stadiums have been relying on this type of technology to streamline people, and reminding us all about the Madison Square Garden using it to ban entry for enemies of its owner, James Dolan, which was big stories back in the day as well, where the sports arenas are using it, and then they also can use it as a security precaution to identify stalkers, or also to ban people. So the lawsuit alleges that Disney doesn't properly disclose to guests it collects the data. And the complaint says guests should be able to expressly opt into this type of sensitive facial recognition technology with written consent. The onus of privacy rights should be on the victim. And that's the lawyer. Given how sensitive facial recognition data is, explicit written consent should be required. Okay, anyway, sorry. We're going to stop reading because that's the gist of it. Disneyland is my home park. I can tell you from my experience how this works, and it's not like this is a completely unknown. Okay, there are new ticket entry stations, and basically there's a big sign over each entry line, just kind of like at the airport. If you've been to the airport recently, and there's the contactless, and there's a little sign that's like, this one is this one. That's what it is like at the Disneyland. There's a sign above each one, and it says which ones use your face and which ones do not. And so the ones that do not use your face are the old school ones where you scan the badge, and then the human looks at the face of your annual pass, and they compare it to your actual face, and they say, great. If you go to the automated ones, the computer does that step, and there's still an agent there. The agent can just manage multiple because it's mostly automated. They're just there to watch. But basically, when you walk up to the automated one, it's just like at the airport. There's a little like outline, and you walk into the outline, and then it does a little magic thing, and it scans it, and then it compares the picture it just took to the file of your annual pass or your park ticket, and then it gives you a green, hopefully, and then you proceed in, and the little automated gate just opens. So it's literally just like you would do for any sort of airport, the passport gates, any of these types of things or whatever. So it's the same exact feeling. So I think that this lawsuit is ridiculous. I'm sure that there are people who are going to disagree with me, but I think it's ridiculous because this is a private company. It's the same type of technology we see at a lot of other places. I'm sure that you probably gave written consent when you purchased the park ticket. Like, sorry, not sorry, but that's, usually you're buying into that. And you can go for a non-version. There's a big sign, so just look at the sign if that really bothers you. And also, I'm not sure why there's that much of a concern. Like, it's just comparing your face to the picture that you have to give them anyway. So you have to give them the picture regardless. We've always done that for decades. So it's really just the comparing it to the current. And I don't see how that's a problem. Also, because anywhere you walk right now, people are scanning your face for any hundreds of reasons. People are wearing meta glasses, people are whatever. I mean, I think that this is one of the few instances in which it is worth the amount of time that it saves and how much it gets people in and through parks faster.
Well, and I hate to sound like the conspiracy theorist, but as with everything Disney, what it says it is on the surface is rarely what it really is. Mm-hmm. So if I were going to extrapolate, it's not about getting you through the turnstile quicker. It's about being able to track your movement throughout the park. So once they identify the biometrics of your face, they then, throughout the rest of the park, if all they have to do is have cameras up that have the same technology, and they can track exactly where you go, they can target things. This is the same idea as the Magic Band. It's exactly the same idea as the Magic Band.
Well, and the stadiums,
only it's without a Magic Band, and it does it with your face.
Yeah. So, and the space stadiums in a way, because space stadiums are using it for security as well as
absolutely. There's the party street here in Tampa, Ybor City, has it on the main drag. It tells you point blank, if you are on this street, you are being identified biometrically with a facial scan.
Yep.
So it is something that is happening all over the place. The only issue that I can see. Well, first of all, let me start by saying I agree with you 100%, Philip. I think this is a ridiculous lawsuit. But the only caveat I give to that statement is it is children. They are including children there. And with the way, we have to assume that Disney is not nefarious in any way, shape, or form, but we can't necessarily say that everyone who works for Disney is not nefarious in some shape or form. So that's the only place I can see some concern. But truth be told, to your point, for grown-ups, for adults, get used to it. I mean, we open our phones just by looking at them. So
that's right.
And that captures the same amount of biometric data in a facial scan. And who knows where that goes? They claim that it only stays on the phone, but I can neither confirm nor deny that. I don't know.
Well, and I also, I know we're running out of time. The last thing I want to point out is this is more the norm actually in other countries as well. I mean, this is, China, there are cameras literally watching literally everything. Like, that's why there's so low crime. Yeah. In the Middle East, you're familiar with the Middle East area. It's very similar there.
Abu Dhabi is exactly the same way. Dubai is the same way. And that's why their crime rate is so incredibly low. That's why people just get speeding tickets in the mail. They don't get pulled over. They just get it sent to them with an image of them speeding. It's like, here's the proof. Here's the ticket. Pay it.
And I just think that private companies are allowed to kind of do, what they want. That's why they're private. Some of these are different because we're that safety stuff and security is a government and this is a private. So I recognize it's different, but I guess private companies are allowed to do it. And I'm sure that some verbiage is in the ticket that when you agree to the terms to buy the ticket, I'm sure something's in there.
I'm sure that this is a class action suit lawyer who's going, hey, I can make some bucks off of this, and I can get Disney to change. I can get Disney, if nothing else, I can get Disney to change their to make their whatever it is that you sign when you buy the ticket or agree to when you buy the ticket. By clicking this, you agree to X, Y, and Z, and that's going to be a great feather in their cap, and they'll make more money as a hotshot lawyer. I don't know. It's much ado about nothing, in my opinion, because much of this already exists. And I will say that it probably would not, this lawsuit would not happen in other countries, and I doubt that it would even happen in Florida, but it would definitely happen in California because, again, California is always human rights first. And so, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it is, it's a unique situation that when you really break it down, has very little to do with much of anything. But hopefully, in starting these kinds of conversations, you can have these conversations and continue them after the show is over, because guess what? This show is over. So we're done with what we have to talk about for this week. Thank you again for being a listener or a viewer. And on behalf of my charming co-host, Philip Hernandez with Gantom Lighting and Control, and myself, Scott Swenson with Scott Swenson Creative Development, this is Green Tag Theme Park in 30. And guess what? We'll see you next week.